Hello, hello. I have asked to do a tutorial on quick and dirty metals now. So I've got a Horde Troll Blood, and what we have are two sections. We've got the vambrace, the arm. I think that's what it's called. The armor on the arm, and the spear point that we're going to be doing. So we're going to do steel. I like to start out with a darker steel, so I've got Leadbelcher here, Citadel Leadbelcher. I'm going to just do it straight from the bottle. There's no, like I said, we're doing it because it's quick and dirty. But it should, this is a sort of a basis for how I paint a lot when I'm not painting for painting fancy figures. So you'll notice that I have undercoated the parts that I want steel a black, and this is to add some depth to the silver color. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm using a pretty large brush. It's a size 3. It's just something that I picked up from one of the local art stores. It's nothing fancy, and I'm just slathering on the paint, since some of the other bits are at least undercoated. I'm not allowing the paint to spill over, so I do have to be kind of careful around the edges. That's a pretty common problem. I usually leave the metals for last. Not always, but I usually do, so just make sure that the edges back there are all caught. We're not going to do the base coating on everything. There are 3 more spear points and a whole nother bit of armor on his other forearm. We'll leave those alone for right now. Okay, so wash the brush off, and here are the results. Here's that steel color. You can see it's a nice smooth coat of paint. It's one of the things that I do like about the Citadel metallics, is that they do go on pretty nicely out of the bottle. Now, the undercoating of black, I think, is important. It's been important for me. Here's just a random Malifaux figure. This guy's been primed with the Ghost Gray primer, but a lot of times I will do a clear primer, glass and tile medium. So here's another Trollkin guy. So the silver, or the black undercoat of the silver, is especially important. Alright, the next thing, again, keeping in mind that this is quick and dirty, so we're doing this as fast as we can, is just everybody's favorite Nuln Oil. And we're just gonna, no finesse. Again, no finesse. We're just putting it down. Now, if you'll notice here, the Nuln Oil is showing us that there is some inconsistency. I didn't put the best base coat on the spear point here. Again, it's pretty okay. We're going to go back over it, so it doesn't need to be perfect. The wash will produce, or will show you some of those imperfections in your work. Best not to get too hung up on it. This is, again, just for shading purposes. So there's no science to this. No finesse. We want it to run everywhere. is sort of the trick here. So yeah, wash the brush. Alright, so now here's how it looks. It's a little close to the camera. Perhaps I'm having trouble getting it to focus, which is alright because the ink needs to dry. There we go. So you can see there's kind of a shine. That's the wet ink, but I hope that it's obvious the work that the ink is doing. It's being drawn into the creases where the all of the various crevices of the armor. So normally what I would do at this point is probably go paint some other part of the figure, but instead just draw off a little bit of the oil with the brush to help it dry. It doesn't take too long. Now, the next part, we're going to do some highlighting over what we've done. The trick is, of course, to keep on the high part. So what I will do is we're going to use Ironbreaker, which is one step up from Leadbelcher. If I'm doing other colors, non-metallics, and I'm working more slowly, more carefully, then what I'll do is I'll go back to my base shade for the first highlight after a wash. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and do Ironbreaker, and then I'll probably do an edge highlight with Runefang. I'm not mixing any colors. Usually I mix on a wet palette or something interactively while I paint. But not the case here. And then, this guy's he's a troll. He probably doesn't spend a ton of time cleaning his armor. Enough probably that it doesn't rust. So then we can go back with Nuln Oil, or my two favorites, Agrax Earthshade and Reikland Fleshshade. If it does need any sort of rusty tone, the Fuegan Orange shade is pretty good, or Ryza Rust, of course. But we won't be using the Ryza Rust. It's too bright for me for this guy right now. Okay, so it looks like the ink has dried. That was pretty quick. So we break up the Ironbreaker here, and again, we're not gonna. I don't really like the way that dry brushing looks. I mean, you can get kind of a dry brush or a brushed metal look, but it's not necessarily, I think, what I want for the most part. So the spear point is a little tricky, so I'm going to leave that. You can see there's just a little bit of the ink left exposed, but you can see how, hopefully you can see how that has gone over the ink. Obviously, if we were thinning the paints, it would be easier. I'm going to go ahead and brighten up the tip of the spear and leave the base a little shaded. Just try to use a really light hand there. I am wiping off the tip of my brush on a paper towel occasionally, just to make sure that I have more control over the paint, even though it's not thinned. If it were thinned, that would be an especially important step, but in this case, I'm not really too concerned about it. A little bit of a fuzz, probably cat hair. Cats are going crazy right now. I don't know why. Probably because I'm still awake. Alright. Okay, so there's the spear point. See, I went back, I covered up that little area just a little bit. It's almost like dry brushing, but I think it gives kind of a little better of a look to it. Then we'll go back and so this is a little more interesting. And in fact, I'm going to switch to size 1 brush. Just kind of another cheap brush, nothing exciting. Give me a little bit more accuracy to go in and get these rivets, and get in and around the rivets with this, again, this Iron Breaker steel color. Let's see if we can get it really close to the camera. Oops, that was a little bit too close, but that's okay. I was trying to leave a little bit of... This is not an optimal hand position, is the problem. I was trying to leave a little bit of the Leadbelcher color, the shade around each rivet. Not a big deal if I screw up. It'll look better if I can avoid going right up to that rivet and leaving a little bit of a gap there. It's a little too bright for my tastes right now. But that's okay, because we can fix that in just a minute. Okay, so I'll just draw a little bit of that brighter color in, and then just go to the back side. Make sure that that's brightened up very slightly. Hit each rivet. Make sure that the color is relatively uniform around each rivet. Alright, so that's what that looks like. It's too bright. It's pretty sloppy, and it's coming out really bright on the camera. It's a little less bright in real life, as it were. Okay, so now final metallic highlight here. We're going to use the Runefang steel, and on the spear point, I'm just going to use the edge of the brush here. Get a nice edge highlight, which admittedly is a little hard to see. Brush off some paint. It was a little sloppy. Okay. And the last edge here, I think. So we'll just... Nothing too fancy. Okay, so there are the results. The differentiation is not as good as I'd like, but it'll work for now. Okay, so now with this high highlight with the Runefang steel, I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to hit the top of each rivet. And I'm really not going to spend any time on the base of the armor, or the armor plating. Just going to hit each rivet to bring it up a level, and then I guess I'll give this top part here just a little bit of an edge highlight. I could get this even shinier with some of the Necron highlight, but I don't feel like I need to. It's too bright already. I'm really not exceedingly pleased with these results, but now what we're going to do is we'll grab some of this Reikland Flesh Shade. So when I'm weathering metal like this, I always like to go light to dark, because the light isn't going to show up as much. So now I'm just going to take this shade and I'll put a little bit of it sort of at the base of the spear. Remember where we left some of that, some of the darker colors, and where the spear meets the leather, that'll probably be kind of aged, so I'll just dab a bit of paint there. Give it a little bit more of a contrast. Hear the trains going by. Okay, so layering with that for a few minutes, and that's the result. Oops. Alright, so you can see that there's a little bit of a haze to the metal. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this Reikland Flesh Shade all over the rivets. And then down into the gaps right at the edge of the armor. And right along the rivets here. And try not to get any up in this space right here above the rivets. So that's a nice flat spot, and it deserves to be nice bright silver. Okay, so here we go. We've sort of sullied the vambrace there. Let's see if we can get it to come into focus here. There we go. So now it's got a bit more depth. Now, what we're going to do, last step, I think, is we'll take some of the, well, second to last step, actually. So we'll take some of this Agrax Earthshade and just use the littlest amount, and we're just going to darken up, so not quite as free with this stuff. Oops, a little bit too much, that's okay. You can just dab it off with the brush. Put it elsewhere on the figure. So just darken that up. It'll look a little dirtier. You can see now there's a ring around each rivet, and it occurs to me that I could have saved myself some time by not actually using the Runefang steel yet, and instead coming back to it. Because I'm going to have to anyway. So now we'll just put the smallest amount of Agrax Earthshade, just a tiny bit. I went up to maybe halfway up the spear with the Reikland Flesh Shade, and now maybe a quarter or an eighth up the spear with the darker ink, and definitely get some in that gap between the steel and the leather. Alright, so now last but not least, we'll grab this Runefang steel again and just go back and we will highlight these rivets just a little touch. To make them stick out. And I'm pretty happy with the spear point at this point, so no reason to go back over that. Alright, and so here is the finished product about 20 minutes later. This needs to be varnished at this point. I'd use a matte varnish, and then if I was really fancy, maybe go back over it with a tiny bit of the steel. So, I hope that was helpful. Never done a tutorial before, so hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think. Thanks.